for life. And also sponsored by Flores Glass, serving the area since 1977 with residential and commercial work.
Good evening, friends, and welcome to another episode of Wayback Wednesday. I'm Randy Adcox. Glad you could be with us tonight. It's been an interesting week, to say the least, and I always enjoy getting ready for the show each Wednesday night. I spend a few hours sometimes doing research and looking through the newspapers.com website. You've heard me mention that many times on the shows. But I also talk to people, and I run into people out in town getting about and get ideas for shows and so forth. But I said before, I've got what I think to be a great audience. You as a viewer, I really appreciate your viewership each week. And if you remember from last week's show, I put out the word that I would like to have one of the books by Foy Pullen. If you remember from last week's show, we talked about Foy and his long, illustrious career in aviation in and around Rocky Mount. And he's actually was a topic in two books. He co-authored one of them with a lady named Peggy Strickland here locally, and I'm not sure about the other one. But in any case, I had been on the hunt trying to find one or both of those books, and lo and behold, last Thursday after last Wednesday night show, I got a call from a viewer who said, "I've got one of the books. If you'd like to have it, you're welcome to it." I said, "Oh, great." So I jumped in my truck right then and took off over there. I won't call his name, but I don't want to embarrass him in case he's got other family members that would have liked to have the book instead of giving it to me. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate it. And by the way, this is the book. It's called 90 Years of Aviation in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, 1917 to 2007. It is written by Foy Pullen and edited by Margaret T. Her nickname was Peggy Strickland. I've had it now, as I said, for about a week, and every day I go through and just read little snippets of it, and it's got a bunch of pictures in it. I've got to figure out a way to try to get some of these pictures copied so I can share them with you on a future show. But it's a neat book. It's got some neat stories about some of the pilots, and every time I pick it up and browse through it, I find another person that either I knew or heard about and either didn't know they were a pilot or didn't know that they were involved to the extent they were with aviation in and around Rocky Mount. As a small child, I had a couple of ambitions that just never materialized. One was to be an astronaut, and the other was to be a pilot. And so neither one of those ever materialized, obviously. But at the same time, I've always been fascinated by airplanes and by flight, and so it's been neat finding out this history about the local aviation community in Rocky Mount and those who were instrumental in bringing it along, so to speak, over the years. Also, I got a request a couple of weeks ago from one of our viewers to try to find out something about the bridge that goes over the railroad tracks out north of Rocky Mount. It's Airport Road till it gets up to Church Street there, and then as you go over the bridge over by the old Pepsi-Cola bottling plant over the railroad tracks, most of us now refer to it as 97. And so the question was, when did that become a bridge there? In other words, at some point in the past, there was just a grade level crossing there. You just rode over the railroad tracks. And at some point, they put a bridge there. And so I started looking in earnest, trying to find out something about that bridge or about the time when the first bridge was put there. Because oftentimes bridges get replaced. Over years they get wear and tear, and they do get replaced. So the bridge that's there now obviously is not the original bridge. And so I'm still in hunt on information about the original bridge, but I will share with you tonight what I did find out about that area and about the bridge. And another interesting thing I found out about that stretch of road, once you get off of Church Street and head up over the bridge, over the overpass, over the railroad tracks, that road from there on out has been known by literally 4 different names over the years. And as I said earlier, most of us now refer to it as Highway 97. Years ago, it was known as Highway 95. It was also known as the Leggett Highway, and many of you probably still know it as Cool Spring Road. And so when I was doing research trying to find out about that bridge, I would have to do my searches using all 4 of those road names to see, make sure I didn't miss anything. So anyway, as I was doing research, trying to find out about that bridge and using those 4 road names, Highway 95, Highway 97, Cool Spring Road, and Leggett Highway, I found and just stumbled across other things that I thought were interesting enough to share with you tonight. So tonight's going to be, as my father used to say, a jukous mixture of pictures and articles and little bits of information. So bear with me, and we'll try to tie all this together. With that being said, Lee, let's go to item number 1. And this is a report of a bridge inspection that occurred, I believe it was in 2021. It's a little hard. This is actually a spreadsheet, but it outlines, and Lee, if you can, zoom in there on that yellow line. I'm not sure if it'll get clearer than it is. It's a little bit grainy and fuzzy now. But every so often, the state of North Carolina Department of Transportation, in fact, goes out and inspects these. There you go, inspects these bridges. So the bridge is going over, you see that SCL Railroad, that State Road 1555, which, depending on your preference, is either Leggett Road or Leggett Highway, Highway 97, or Cool Spring Road. But the particular bridge that's there now was built in 2006, okay? So as I said, that's not the original bridge, obviously. There's been at least one more bridge there before. It was a grade level crossing there. But this is what I started, the first thing I ran across when I was doing research. And so the state has got some very detailed information about current bridge status. They do inspect these things periodically, and this is, I saw actually several reports, and this is the one that was probably the least detailed, actually, because others were much more involved. They tell you all about the structure of the bridge and the understructure, the undercarriage, everything, how the bridge is made and so forth. But this is fairly simple here. It just kind of gives you, there's a DOT designation number to the far left there, and then there you see the route, State Road 1555, and then it goes across, and sometimes it'll say it goes across a river or creek. You see in this case SCL Railroad, and you see the year built 2006. Posted, I forget what those abbreviations stand for, SGW, something to do with weight, I think. But anyway, this was what I could find on the bridge as it is today. And I think, as I said before, I think it's from 2021 this inspection took place here. So, okay, as I said, I was looking for what I could find on Leggett Road or Cool Spring Road or Highway 97. Oh, we got a call. Let's get this call. Hello, caller, you on the air?
Andy, good evening. Enjoying the show. The SR designation for DOT means secondary road.
Okay. That makes sense.
Everybody quite frequently calls it state road, but it's secondary.
Secondary road. Okay. All right. Good deal. Okay. I'll make a note. Appreciate it, Bob.
Okay.
All right, buddy. We'll see you. Okay. So, but yeah, there's a lot of information about these bridges out there. And it can be a little daunting, frankly, to... Oh, we got another call. Let's get this call. Hello, caller. You on the air? Hello, caller. I must have lost you. Okay. I'm going to hang up and feel free to call back. But anyway, as I said, I was looking for information about the bridge. I was doing various searches, different years. I would search from, I went back literally to the 1800s just to see if I could find anything. And interestingly enough, I didn't find any reference to any of those road names until I got to about 1940. So prior to 1940, I'm sure the road was there. It's been some sort of a highway, if you will, going back, I'm sure, before the 1940s. But in 1940 was the first time I began to see a reference to that road. So Lee, if you would, let's go ahead to item number 2. This is actually, I misspoke there. I said 1940. This is 1935. This is actually an advertisement for an auction that took place October 25th, 1935. And interestingly enough, at the very top it says Elm Grove Farm, and beneath that, it's kind of blurry, I know on your screen, but beneath that it says formerly known as Shell Bank, okay? And it says located at Rocky Mount Leggett's Highway, about 5 miles from Rocky Mount. So as I said, this was 1935, so literally this is the first date I could find anything that referenced Leggett's Highway or anything out in that area, and I'm positive the road dates back further than 1935, but this was just the first thing I found. And I did, in fact, go back and search through from 1850 all the way up through the early 1900s. But so anyway, and this farm has been sold a few times over the years. I'm sure it's probably not the same size as it was initially. But if you remember, we had it's been several months ago now, we had a little bit of a discussion about the Shell Bank Farm and trying to determine how it was named. If I'm not mistaken, I think part of the farm is backed up to Tar River, so that's probably part of it. But where the Shell the name part of it comes from, I really don't know. But anyway, okay, moving along, Lee. Let's go to item number 3. And while I was looking, I stumbled across this article from October 26, 1945, and it was the first reference that I had remembered running across to the Avalon Airport being constructed. And Lee, if you would, just zoom in on the very top part. I'm not going to read this whole thing, it's kind of long. But this appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram, October 26, 1945, and you see the headline. It says, "Work underway on new airport." Now, I'm just going to read the first couple of paragraphs here. It says, "Work has been started here on Avalon Air Park, an air park for the use of Rocky Mount citizens and air tourist trade, located near the Tar River about 2 miles from the city on the Leggett Highway. Co-owned by H.I. Stevens of the Stevens Clothing Company and Mr. Marshall, now associated with the Montgomery Ward and Company, the airport is being built with an eye to the future of air transportation." Marshall said, "Many of the proposed facilities of the airport will be added later with the growth of business and of air travel. This is the first privately owned airport to be built in the area." So it goes on to talk about it was going to be a 3,000-foot runway. There's going to be a couple hangars built out there, and there were really some big plans for the Avalon Airport. And I don't think it ever materialized. Obviously, it didn't to the level that they had anticipated or hoped it would, obviously. But, I think for probably many years it was a crop dusting airstrip, and I'm sure it got a lot of use by crop dusters. And I'm sure also there were probably a lot of private pilots who would use it to practice takeoffs and landings, that kind of stuff. And not having as much traffic as some of the bigger airports, even including the Rocky Mountain Municipal Airport over on Church Street, it was probably a fairly easy airport to get in and out of, I would guess. So anyway, all right, let's go ahead then and move on to item number 4. And as I said, I was just researching, trying to find what I could find about anything that might appear on Leggett Road or Cool Spring Road or Highway 95 or Highway 97. And I stumbled across this article that appeared in October 25th, 1946. And the headline reads, "The CAA installs radio range near Rocky Mount." Now, you've probably been by this 100 times and never realized what it was. It was referred to me as being, I can think of VOA tower is the way it was referred to me, or VOR tower, I think it was. But anyway, it says, the caption reads, "Pictured above is the radio range now being constructed on the Cool Springs Farm, 4 miles from Rocky Mount on the Leggett Highway. It is one of many such ranges now being installed on the airways throughout the nation. Operating on 109 megacycles, the ranges will direct the pilots of the airliners to their destination in any kind of weather. Because of the high operating frequency, the transmitted radio energy travels only in straight lines, as does light. Thus, the ranges must be spaced at a maximum of 70 miles. The equipment is entirely automatic and requires no operating personnel. The numbers painted on the roof show the direction of the beams." So anyway, this is a navigational aid, a navigational aid for pilots. It's still in use. It's out on 97. If you're headed east of Rocky Mountain 97, it'll be off to your left out, like I said, about 3 or 4 miles out of town. But it was installed in 1946, right after World War II, and that kind of jives with what we're seeing around the area here after World War II, when a lot of pilots or former military guys came back and got involved in aviation. One of the things I was reading in the Foley Pullman book was about my old neighbor, Dan Vaughn, and I never knew this about him. He was a B-24 crew chief in World War II, and at that time was not a pilot, but he got out of the Army after the war and came back home, got his pilot's license, and flew for a number of years, and I didn't realize that. Okay, Lisa, let's move on then. Item number 5. You know, we talked last week about the sad news of Foy being in a plane crash as a very young pilot, and sadly the person with him getting killed. Well, there was another plane crash right here in Rocky Mountain. This young man, Ben Rook, it says here about 20, And this is a real short article. I read it. It says, local youth falls in plane, believed seriously injured. Ben Rook, 20, crashes training plane into field this morning. It says Ben Rook, about 20, of the Williford School section, was believed seriously injured today when the Piper Cub trainer, which he was flying, crashed into a field near his home and was demolished. Rook, who is employed by the Texaco Wholesale Company here, had taken off from a routine training flight from the Avalon Flying School on Highway 95 this morning. The accident occurred at approximately 10:45 a.m. George W. Bone and P.H. Johnson, Nash County deputies, were traveling by automobile near the scene and were among the first to arrive at the disaster. The law officer stated that the plane had been flying low prior to the crash. Rook was taken to a local hospital shortly after the accident, but hospital officials have not disclosed his condition. Now, I'm happy to tell you that Mr. Rook survived this plane crash. And if you look at his plane, you'd be amazed that he did. Look at this plane. Item number 6, if you would, Lee. This was the plane that Ben, and by the way, the article I think has got his name wrong because they refer to him as Ben Rook. His last name was actually Rooks, R-O-O-K-S. But in both that article and in this little picture here in the caption, they've got his name. It was just Rook with no S on him. But the caption here reads, Ben Rook, 20-year-old local man, was seriously injured this morning when the light plane above crashed from apparently low altitude near Highway 95 in the vicinity of Williford School. Nash County Deputy Sheriff George Bone, who was one of the first on the scene to reach the crash, said the plane had been flying very low immediately before the earthward plunge. This plane is said to be a total loss. So, very fortunate to survive this crash. You see it landed nose down, which often means the pilot takes the brunt of the crash. And so he was banged up pretty good, did go to the hospital, but he did survive. So I was a little bit curious about Mr. Rook, and I thought, well, if he survived, what did he do? You know, he was a very young man, 20 years old when he crashed this airplane. So what did he do? Well, lo and behold, I found out a little bit about Mr. Rooks. Not much, and I don't have a big, long biography to share with you tonight, but I will tell you a couple things I did find. He actually went on to own a gas station. Many of you may have purchased gas from Mr. Rooks in later years. Item number 7, if you would, Lee. The Rocky Mount City Directory in 1960. Well, that blew up good, didn't it? I intentionally made it large. I didn't realize it was going to be this big on the screen. My apologies. I might have to zoom out on that a little bit, Lee. But this is the 1960 Rocky Mount City Directory. And there we go. And what it says is Fina Gas Service Station. The gentleman's name was Andrew Benjamin Rooks. He went by the name of Ben, actually. But he ran this gas station called the Fina, I remember the Fina brand name, Fina Gas Station at 1300 Raleigh Road. That was Mr. Rooks' gas station. And so I thought, well, he was probably married, so let's do a little more research. Item number 8, if you would, Lee. This is probably going to blow up big, too, because I intentionally made it. There you go. This is lists him, Andrew B. Rooks. His wife was Kathy S. Rook. You see there, they misspelled the word Fina. It says Fine Gas Station. That's supposed to be Fina Gas Station. And their residence was 694 Paul Street. So, I think, and I'm not sure, but I think I went to school with one of his descendants, a young lady named Terry Rooks. I'm not sure what her married name is now. But in any case, he ran the Fina gas station over on Raleigh Road, 1300 Raleigh Road, and lived, at least this was in 1960. So I went and looked at my 1963 city directory, and he was still showing listed the same address and running the same gas station in 1960. So I'm not sure after that where he went. But I did find his obituary. Item number 9, if you would, Lee. March the 7th, 1991, the Rocky Mount Telegram had his obituary listed. Andrew Benjamin Rooks, 63, fairly young man when he passed away, died Wednesday, March 6, 1991 at the Veterans Hospital in Durham. He was born in Nash County, June 9, 1927, the son of the late Jesse M. Rooks Sr. and Mary Whitley Rooks. He was a retired merchant. And then it goes on to list his family. So from an airplane crash that took place that he was seriously injured in 1948, he went on to live quite a few more years after that, luckily. So anyway, I just realized it's time for our first commercial break. Lee, if you would bring it back to me. When we come back from the break, as I said earlier, I was trying to find some information about this bridge that goes over the railroad tracks on Highway 97, Leggett Road, Cool Spring Road, whatever you want to call it. And I just kept popping up with things and finding things that were either on that road or related to that road. So I said, well, I'll just put them all together and we'll share them on the show tonight. So when we come back from the break, I'll show you some more things I found about that area while I was looking for information about the bridge. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Wayback Wednesday.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service, we offer refreshments prior to visitations and services of our family, and we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
If you or your loved one is living with hearing loss, and if you haven't found a solution that fits your lifestyle, then you should consult with the local experts at the new Hearing Aid Urgent Care in Nashville, North Carolina. Hearing Aid Urgent Care is a place to go for over-the-counter hearing solutions that will improve your daily life and communication between your loved ones and you. Purchasing in our store does not require any prescription or medical recommendation. Our team of experts does recommend a hearing examination so we can help you purchase the correct product for your personal needs. We hold regular listen and learn events so you can ask questions and work with the high-quality products from our vendors to find out what hearing device will best suit you before you buy. Open Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And you can call 252-459-4008 to find out more information. Hearing Aid Urgent Care located at 102 West Nashville Drive in Nashville, North Carolina.
When faced with special care needs for elderly or disabled loved ones, families want compassionate, comforting care. That's Tender Touch Home Care Services' goal, providing the level of care we would expect for our own. With over 10 years of home care excellence, Tender Touch provides an array of services that keeps your loved one at home. From personal care, light housekeeping, errands, and meal preparation, to our private duty care program, which combines all of our home care offerings in one package.
Tender Touch Home Care Services, where your needs are our concern.
We're in our 18th year of practice at the Hammer Chiropractic Center, and we've seen over 15,000 different people in the Rocky Mount area. 40% of headaches actually come from a neck problem. Many patients come in taking multiple aspirin, over-the-counter medications and such a day, and we can get you to stop doing that and actually fix the problem so the headaches don't rise anymore. A lot of people think chiropractic hurts. It does not. Most of the people come in and they feel great when they leave.
And we're back. Folks, if you're just tuning in, you're watching Wayback Wednesday. I'm Randy Adcox. Glad you're with us tonight. As I said at the top of the show, Eric Dawson had asked me a couple of weeks back to see what I could find out about this bridge that goes over the railroad tracks from 301 Church Street Business, 301 over the tracks to what become Highway 97. As I said earlier, while I was researching, I'd heard these terms before, these names for this road in the past, but I've forgotten some of them, frankly. But long before it was 97, of course, it was Highway 95. When Interstate 95 came through, they changed the designation from Highway 95 to Highway 97. But for a lot of old timers, we'll say that road was Leggett Road. And to some today, it's Cool Spring Road. So it just depends on where you're from and how you address that road. So I was doing research trying to find out about the bridge, and so I would research different time frames and different date ranges, and I would word my searches various ways, trying to find what I really wanted to know was at what point was there no bridge there, and it was just a grade level crossing. And so I've not found that yet, but I will. I'll keep digging until I find it. But as I was looking for this information about the bridge, I kept stumbling across these things that kind of piqued my interest. One of which was an article that appeared November 7th, 1949. Item number 10, if you would, Lee. And I didn't realize that this place had been around Rocky Mount this long. But in November of 1949, the American Bakeries Company opened up a plant here in Rocky Mount. And I'm not going to read this whole thing. It's a fairly long article, but it starts off, it says, the American Bakeries Company, with headquarters in Atlanta, today announced plans to start construction here at an early date of an ultra-modern bakery employing 150 persons and costing between $750,000 to $1 million. The company makes Merita bread and cakes. And so it goes on to talk about everything's going to be involved there, what they're going to do there, how big the building's going to be, and so forth. And so it was a big deal, obviously. I mean, to bring 150 new jobs into an area, spend $750,000 to $1 million investment in the area to build this plant. And for a number of years, Merita Bakery was one of the better employers in Rocky Mount. A lot of people worked there. I had friends who worked there. But it was a big boom to Rocky Mount in 1949. This was a good thing to land here. Also, in the same issue of the Telegram that day, November 7, 1949, they had a architect's rendering of what the plant would look like. So, Lee, if you would put up item number 11. I don't recall ever seeing this image before, this picture before. And again, it's an artist's rendition. And I don't think the plant ever looked exactly like this. At least I don't remember it looking exactly like this. But this was the artist's conception of how the plant would be. It says, here's the architect's model of the ultra-modern Merita plant, which will be built soon just beyond the municipal airport on US 301. The plant, costing an estimated $750,000 to $1 million, will employ 150 persons. So this was a big deal, as I said, in 1949 to bring this kind of employment capability into this area was a big deal for Rocky Mount. And for many years, Merita Bakery was a major producer of jobs in the area. I don't remember exactly when they ceased operations over there. It's been several years ago now, but for several decades anyway, it did a booming business over there. Okay, let's go on then. Item number 12. January the 7th, 1950, this ad appeared in the Rocky Mountain Telegram, and it says, announcing the opening of the Community Barn Dance, Saturday night, January the 7th from 9 to 12. Admission is $1.50 per couple. Located in the old schoolhouse, 5 miles from Tarboro and 2 miles from Leggett on the Tarboro-Leggett Highway, dancing every Wednesday and Saturday night. So I don't recall ever hearing about this before. Honestly, I don't. This is the first time I ever remember seeing or hearing anything about this. Maybe some of you remember going there. Maybe you danced there. But in 1950, they opened up this community barn dance on the day you see the Tarboro-Leggett Highway. It was actually closer to Tarboro than Rocky Mount, obviously. But it just kind of struck me as odd that they would turn an old schoolhouse into a barn dance location. But I would imagine that they probably drove some crowds in there on occasion. Probably a packed place to be, in fact. Okay, as I said, I was still looking for information about the bridge. I was researching. I would do some Google searches. I would go back to my newspapers.com website. I would, use various search. And what I have found over the last few years of doing this show and using this newspapers.com website and Google too, for that matter, quite often what you find depends on how you word your searches. So that's a little clue, a little hint there for those of you who like to research these kinds of things yourself. Sometimes just a minor change in the way you search on the internet search engine like Google, for example, can make all the difference in the world in what you find. And so I was trying different search phrases, using different dates, different names of the road I was trying to search for, trying to find this bridge. And I stumbled across an article that may be the best clue yet, still not definitive about when the first bridge was built over that train track out there. But November 19th, 1950, item number 13, if you would, Lee. This was an article, it's a long article. I'm not going to try to read the whole thing. But basically, I'm going to read the first part of it because it kind of sets the storyline for you here. And the headline reads, Looking to the Future. What about Rocky Mount's future? Will we continue to grow gradually around the edges? Will our interior one day take on new life, which could come to a city without a choo-choo down the middle? What about office space and room for new buildings? What about traffic and parking? Will our transportation continue to expand, disappear, or what? What about hospitals? These and many more questions are confronting Rocky Mount today. Fortunately, a few citizens are giving thought to them. Unfortunately, not enough citizens are thinking about them. And it goes on to talk about Rocky Mount needing to increase the size of the city, to expand outward and so forth. And it's looking at different options. And it goes on to talk about, it says, our new Chamber of Commerce manager has a fine idea concerning business development in Rocky Mount. The idea could work and could benefit the town greatly. In fact, it could stamp Rocky Mount as one of the most progressive cities in eastern North Carolina if it could be put into operation. The idea, briefly, is to get our tobacco warehousemen to do some swapping, exchanging their present sites for a super warehouse district which could be constructed on city-owned land between Tar River and the Leggett Highway overhead bridge east of the railroad. Handsome layouts could be constructed according to the plan of that area, and a tobacco town, the likes of which has never been seen before, could be constructed. So this appeared November 19th, 1950, and they're talking about the possibility of getting the local tobaccomen who own these tobacco warehouses in Rocky Mount to move their operation out to the northern part of the city, go out here on the Edgecombe County side, right there in the vicinity of that bridge going over the railroad tracks, and build a super is the way they refer to it, a super tobacco town out there. And so what we know from this, number one, is that it never happened, obviously. The tobacco industry, I guess, was too ingrained in downtown Rocky Mount, and it was certainly successful downtown Rocky Mount. So I guess there really wasn't much incentive to monkey or toy with something that was already working. There was just I don't think there was much stomach for trying to uproot what could at one time was as many, I think, 13 tobacco houses in downtown Rocky Mount, and move them all out to a new super tobacco town area, literally miles north of the city. So that never materialized. But the other thing that it tells us is that in 1950 there was a bridge over the railroad tracks there. So we don't know how long it had been there. We don't know when it was built, but we know by 1950 there was an overhead bridge going over the railroad tracks there on the Leggett Highway. So stay tuned on this, because that I do intend at one point, I'm going to try to find out exactly when they put the first bridge over those railroad tracks, because now I want to know. It started out just being something that I thought would be interesting to hear about or find out about, but now I truly want to know, so I'm going to keep digging. Okay, so that's as far as I've gotten on the bridge over the railroad tracks on Leggett Road / Cool Spring Road / Highway 97 / Old Highway 95. But while I was digging around and looking today, I stumbled across some other articles and some advertisements and things that just kind of piqued my interest, so I thought I would share some of those with you tonight. Item number 14, if you would, Lee. August the 12th, 1946, this article appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram, referencing a new business that was going to open up, a new children's store, in fact. And it was called P.H.R. Cradle. I never heard of that. P.H.R. Cradle, C-R-A-D-L-E. I'm not going to read this whole thing. It's very long, so I just want to kind of hit the very first part of it to kind of give you an idea of what it's about. It says the P.H.R. Cradle Shop, located on Southwest Main Street, will be open Friday to supply Rocky Mount and the vicinity with furniture, clothing, and novelties for babies and children. With the motto of everything for the baby, the local store, which is one of a chain, will have nursery furniture, wheel goods, I'm guessing tricycles and such, high chairs, lamps, bric-a-brac. When's the last time you heard that phrase, bric-a-brac? Jewelry, books, toys, and clothing from layettes to that for boys through 6 years of age and girls through 14. Nationally advertised lines will be carried. So in 1946, the P.H.R. Cradle Shop opened Southwest Main Street in Rocky Mount, and it actually apparently didn't last, I think about 6 years, maybe 7, 8 years, I think it was. So we'll look at a couple ads here. Lee, if you would, item number 15. This was the first ad I saw in the Telegram. This was from August the 14th of 1947. I feel like there's probably another one, but this is just the first one I ran across. Almost a year after they opened up. Sure, there were more ads prior to this, but this one appeared August the 17th, 1947. And it says, our first birthday, announcing our birthday sale Friday, August 15th And you see they've got aluminum sterilizers, bassinets, Taylor Tot strollers, deluxe Taylor Tot, and many other real bargains. Complete showing of fall lines in coats and leggings. Now, I looked at this ad, and I looked, and I looked, and I looked, and nowhere on this ad is there a street address or a phone number. And I thought this had to be a mistake. How would you make an ad that's obviously a quarter-page size ad and tell everything you've got for sale, make a big splash about the fact you're having a sale, and not list your address nor your phone number? But it's not here. I looked and I looked and I looked. It's not here. So I said, well, where was this place at? So I kept looking. All right, Lee, item number 16, if you would. This ad appeared June the 6th, 1950. Okay? And you see the headline there, or not the headline, but the top of the page says, "School's out now for the sun." And they talk about swim trunks, bathing suits, boxer shorts. Now to open a new look on fun. Now to scurry to PHR Cradle Shop to have your tots outfitted in sun suits and sundresses, and swimsuits and shorts. They're prettier than ever this year, especially the frilly sheers for little girls, the bold style prints and colors for little boys. Come in now to pick from the cream of the crop. Again, great looking ad, tells everything you want to know about what they offer, but no address and no phone number. And I said, surely somebody should point out that these folks have got some really nice looking ads, but they're not telling anybody where they're located. So somebody must have heard that complaint, because December 14, 1954, item number 17, Lee, oddly, this is the very last ad that I could find. And I did do a couple different searches to see if I could find another ad. And apparently they went out of business in December 1954 because there was nothing listed from PHR Cradle Shops after this ad right here. But if you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner of this ad, it says the address is 218 South Main Street. So, been in business for 7 years, and they finally got around to putting the address in the ad. So, I'm not quite sure what was up with the PHR Cradle Shops, and I never did figure out what PHR stood for. I'm guessing it was probably the owner's initials, maybe he and his wife, I'm not sure. Maybe their last name was Cradle. It was a franchise, it was a chain outfit, and as I said, it did appear in Rocky Mount. In fact, I was able to find a picture of the present, that the building is still standing, by the way. Lee, if you would, item number 18. This is actually, the address here is actually listed as 218 to 220 Southwest Main Street today. So it's that building there in gray, and you can see it's kind of broken up into two sections. And over the years, there's been a number of businesses that occupied these spaces along here. So this was actually from 2019. You probably remember me saying before, when you do a Google search for an address, quite often it'll give you an option to go back and look at 3, 4, 5, sometimes different years of how the building looked. And so this was actually from 2019 that this picture here, this image here appeared. And the reason I chose this one because in the very latest, the 2021, I think, well maybe 2022 was the latest version, and the angle was slightly different. The trees were a little bit bushier, and you couldn't see the building very good. So I just went back and picked 2019. So it looks like if the address stayed the same of the street markings from 1954 up through today, it was probably the one to the right. But in any case, one of these two spaces, 218 and 220, I'm not sure which is which here, but I think it goes up as you go to the left. So it would be 218 to the right, 220 to the left. I think that's the way the numbering went. But anyway, that building still stands. It's on Southwest Main Street, and that's where the PHR Cradle, the little boys and little girls shops was from 1946 or 47 to 1954. Okay, Lee, I see it's time for our next commercial break, so bring it back to me. As I said earlier, when I was getting ready for the night show and doing research, trying to find about this bridge, I kept running across things that I just never seen before, didn't know anything about or never heard of. And so that's kind of what these remaining images are, just things that I stumbled across. I thought it'd be neat to share with you. So when we come back from the break, we'll show you some more things that I just thought would be neat. Okay? We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service, we offer refreshments prior to visitations and services of our family, and we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
If you or your loved one is living with hearing loss, and if you haven't found a solution that fits your lifestyle, then you should consult with the local experts at the new Hearing Aid Urgent Care in Nashville, North Carolina. Hearing Aid Urgent Care is a place to go for over-the-counter hearing solutions that will improve your daily life and communication between your loved ones and you. Purchasing in our store does not require any prescription or medical recommendation. Our team of experts does recommend a hearing examination so we can help you purchase the correct product for your personal needs. We hold regular listen and learn events so you can ask questions and work with the high-quality products from our vendors to find out what hearing device will best suit you before you buy. Open Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And you can call 252-459-4008 to find out more information. Hearing Aid Urgent Care located at 102 West Nashville Drive in Nashville, North Carolina.
When faced with special care needs for elderly or disabled loved ones, families want compassionate, comforting care. That's Tender Touch Home Care Services' goal, providing the level of care we would expect for our own. With over 10 years of home care excellence, Tender Touch provides an array of services that keeps your loved one at home. From personal care, light housekeeping, errands, and meal preparation, to our private duty care program, which combines all of our home care offerings in one package.
Tender Touch Home Care Services, where your needs are our concern.
We're in our 18th year of practice at the Hammer Chiropractic Center, and we've seen over 15,000 different people in the Rocky Mount area. 40% of headaches actually come from a neck problem. Many patients come in taking multiple aspirin, over-the-counter medications and such a day, and we can get you to stop doing that and actually fix the problem so the headaches don't rise anymore. A lot of people think chiropractic hurts. It does not. Most of the people come in and they feel great when they leave.
And we're back. During the break, I was looking at the commercials I was scrolling through, and I just wanted to kind of make a comment about our sponsors, because I need to do that more often. Frankly, I don't do it often enough. But if you happen to be out and about and you go into one of our sponsors' businesses, please tell them you saw their ad on our show. We couldn't do this without their support and their generous contribution to the show. So we appreciate all our sponsors. And so if you get a chance to run into one of them and let them know you saw the ad on the show, I'd appreciate it. And so would they, I'm sure. Okay. All right. As I said earlier, I was bouncing around on the internet and looking through web pages and looking through listings and newspapers.com website, earnestly searching for the source of that bridge over the railroad tracks. And I just kept stumbling across things. I thought, well, that's neat. That's interesting. I hadn't seen that before. And so this next item, if you recall from your history lesson, December 7, 1941, a day will live in infamy when Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, literally forced the U.S. into World War II. From that point on, the whole country became involved in what was called the war effort, and there was just a lot of effort put into making our country and our troops successful in their campaign in World War II. And I ran across a cartoon that I had not seen before, but it just kind of it told that story very eloquently, I thought. Item number 19, if you would, Lee. This is from September 15, 1942. The war's been raging now for about a year and a half or so. And you see if you can zoom out a little bit, Lee. It's actually entitled Heroes of Democracy. And it starts on the left-hand side there, introducing Sergeant Claude Weaver. And it says, sharp eye, in a single week, this lad from Oklahoma City shot down 5 Nazi fighters and 1 bomber over Malta. Then in the middle frame there, it says, Claude is with the Canadian Air Force, one of their aces. he holds a DFM. In his youth, Claude read plenty about Wild Bill Hickok and the old-time crack shot sheriffs of Oklahoma. The ghost of Wild Bill probably smiles down on Claude today as he flashes into battle, guns of fire. Now, a couple things about this that just I thought was interesting. Number one, that this guy, grew up watching, or probably listening to radio, not watching, listening to radio, and reading about Wild Bill Hickok and the old-time crack shop sheriffs in Oklahoma. He had a chance to go to war and become a pilot. He was from Oklahoma City in the United States, but he ended up flying for the Canadian Air Force. How about that? I don't ever recall hearing his name, Claude Weaver. I'm going to do a little research on this guy and see exactly what kind of history he had in World War II. But it was just a neat cartoon, and I love the headline there, the title of the cartoon, Heroes of Democracy. Stookie Allen was the comic who wrote this, illustrator, I guess you'd say. And so I'd never heard of him either, but I love the idea of trying to generate support for the cause, for the war effort, and just the whole idea of making these guys larger than life, if you will. And many of them were then and still are true heroes. Okay. All right, Lee, let's move on then. Item number 20, February 26, 1944. This ad appeared in Rocky Mount, and it's entitled Where to Eat. And it says, Directory of the Best Eating Places in Rocky Mount. So if you were hungry in 1944 and you went for a stroll down downtown Rocky Mount, you had these options to choose from. At the top of the list, the City Lunch. And I have to say, this is the only place on this list that I remember. I remember the City Lunch, but the rest of them I do not remember. The City Lunch, corner Main and Marigold Streets, next to the A&P grocery store. Listen to this offering. They had short orders, of course, beer, wine, open 24 hours, and Mr. P.A. Parker was a proprietor. George's Restaurant, not Mrs. George's, by the way, this is George's Restaurant, and Blue Room, 127 Sunset Avenue, opposite the Center Theater. Cafeteria, table service, soda fountain, beer, wines, dining, dancing, banquets, and parties. Mr. George had it going on. Palace Restaurant, 256 South Main Street. Excellent food, wine, beer, fountain service, caters to soldiers in the heart of the shopping district. And of course, the Rick's Hotel Coffee Shop, open daily except Monday, a la carte service, regular table, I'm not sure how you pronounce this, De Haute Luncheon and Dinner, Maine Lobster Dinner, Syriac oysters on half shell, steaks and chops. And of course, the Royal Palm Restaurant, we've talked about that on the show before, 155 South Main Street, air conditioned in 1944, big deal. Steaks, chicken, chops, roast, seafood, regular meals, a la carte service, good food at reasonable prices. Streetcar Diner, open 24 hours daily. Golden fried chicken, steaks, chops, country ham, and fresh vegetables, corner of South Church at Bassett Street. I've got a picture of that, by the way, the Streetcar Diner. I just remember that. I do have a picture of that. And last but not least, Thomas's Cozy Cafe at 123 South Main Street, noted for its famous hot dog with all the fixings. Blue plates closed. You can't go get a decent hot dog anywhere in Rocky Mount now. Central Cafe is closed. The hot dog stand is closed. It's almost impossible to get a decent hot dog in Rocky Mount. But I digress. These were just, of all these restaurants here, the City Lunch, as I said, was the only one that I remember from my childhood. I'm not sure when they closed, but I remember them being open. I think I even went in there once or twice. But all the other ones, I'm sure some of you probably had the occasion to dine there. I thought this was a neat list of places to eat in Rocky Mount from 1944. Okay, talking about the World War II effort, I stumbled across this picture here, and it just brought back some neat memories for me studying the Tuskegee Airmen in high school and later years. Item number 21, Lee, if you would. This is a war poster, obviously. And it says buy war bonds, and even though nowhere on this poster does it mention the Tuskegee Airmen, I knew exactly that's what this was promoting when I saw it. If you've not heard of the Tuskegee Airmen or don't know anything about them, pick up a book, go to the library or Google it. These were a really illustrious group of pilots, African-American pilots in World War II. These guys got hand-me-down airplanes, second-handed everything. I mean, they just were told to make do with what you've got. And they took what they had, and they were excellent pilots and went out and had just a remarkable flying career. Sadly, the vast majority of these gentlemen there have passed on. I think there's a handful of them still living in their late 90s, early 100s. But that's a really neat piece of American history, what the Tuskegee Airmen accomplished in World War II with such a very, very little amount of equipment and support, I should add, too. They didn't have a lot of support when they got started, and but they really made the country proud and did a great job for us. Okay. Sadly, there was a time in this country when things were much different than they are now, obviously, and that was part of what makes the Tuskegee Airmen story so special, is that they had so much to overcome. Being African Americans, nobody gave them a chance. Nobody expected them to accomplish anything. They were sneered at, laughed at, made fun of, and it was just sad what they went through. And then I stumbled across this item here. This is actually, Lee, item number 22. In 1941, this book was published, and the title is The Negro Motorist Green Book. And when I first saw this, I thought, well, I've never seen this before. What is this about? And then I got to reading what was on. This is just the front cover of the book, by the way. And it says, hotels, taverns, garages, nightclubs, restaurants, service stations, automotive, tourist homes, road houses, barber shops, beauty parlors, prepared in cooperation with the United States Travel Bureau. This was a book that was published so that the traveling African American could go into a hotel and get a room, or go into a tavern and get a meal, or go into a garage and get their car repaired. There were nightclubs on the list in the book, service stations, places that were ordinarily white only, and African Americans were not allowed to go into. And so this book was published specifically for the traveling black Americans who were out on the road, and knew they would have to have somewhere to stay, in a hotel, for example. They wanted to know where they could go get something to eat and not be excluded from being able to enter the restaurant because of the color of their skin. And so I don't know how many of these books were published. I don't know. I'd never seen it before. Didn't know it even existed. But it's a true piece of Americana that such a book had to be published, and was indeed published. And so it's just kind of a very interesting segment of our history that we've obviously moved past now. But I just thought it very interesting when I stumbled across it today. Okay, Lee, let's move on. Item number 23. This ad I'd actually seen before. I think I've shared it on the show one time before, but it just kind of got my funny bone. Peg's Bicycle Shop. I never knew Mr. Peg, don't know anything about it, never seen the picture of Mr. Peg. But in my mind, I just see a picture like a pirate with a wooden leg, hopping around on a peg leg, working on bicycles in a little small shop somewhere on 121 West Thomas Street. You see there it says, bicycles, tricycles, Huffy bikes, Union Hardware skates, and all parts. Let us paint and repair your old bike for Christmas. Plenty of change for bicycles. Peg's Bicycle Shop was doing a booming business in 1950, apparently. Okay, Lee, let's move on. Item number 24. At the same time, I stumbled across the picture of the book there for the traveling African American. I stumbled across this page in the very same section, and this was a poster, if you will, that appeared May of 1870, and it was at the announcement of the 15th Amendment that gave African Americans the right to vote. And so, if you look at this picture, it says a lot here. I don't recognize all the people in here, but there were very prominent people who advocated on behalf of the African American community for the right to vote. And so when the 15th Amendment was passed in May of 1870, that right was granted. And so it's a neat piece of Americana here. Okay, let's move on then. Item number 25, in 1920, it seems hard to believe that it's just only been a little over, 80 years or so, but women in America had gotten the right to vote. The 19th Amendment was passed in 1920, giving women the right to vote. And this poster here says, a woman living here has registered to vote, thereby assuming responsibility of citizenship. So this was in a section that was just kind of geared toward, I should say, Americana and just things from our country's past that were just kind of interesting to go back on. And lastly, I stumbled across something I never knew existed. Item number 26, Lee. Who knew Rocky Mount had our own money? In 1914, the First National Bank of Rocky Mount, yes, had bills. This was a $5 bill. And the gentleman there on the picture on the left there is none other than the 23rd President of the United States, Benjamin Harrison. And interestingly enough, Lee, if you would kind of scroll to the left there and get so you can see Mr. Harrison's picture. And on this $5 bill that appeared in Rocky Mount in 1914, the President of the United States is listed as Ben Harrison. Not President Harrison, not Benjamin Harrison, just Ben. He's just Ben Harrison. There you go. We also had a $10 bill. Item number 27, Lee. Same National Bank of Rocky Mount. In 1914, we had a $10 bill. And that gentleman on the left you see there is the 25th President of the United States, Mr. William McKinley. And again, I had no idea that we had our own money. Rocky Mount had our own money. And it was national currency. You see at the top of the bill there, it says national currency of the United States of America. It was legitimate money. If you had it now, it's probably not worth anything other than for collectible, perhaps. But yes, we had our own money. And finally, Lee, item number 28, from 1914, we had a $20 bill. And the $20 bill had a gentleman on it that I had never heard of before. His name was Mr. Hugh McCulloch. And Hugh McCulloch, if you've never heard of him, Hugh McCulloch was actually the United States Treasury Secretary during the Civil War. He was appointed by Abraham Lincoln, and after the war, he was very much involved in bringing the country back from war and the Reconstruction and so forth. He actually, ironically, his picture appeared on a $20 bill. He advocated for doing away with paper money. He wanted the United States to go back to a silver and gold system of currency and get away from paper money. We didn't do it, obviously, but in any case, that was something that he was promoting and advocating for very early on. Folks, that's going to do it for us tonight. Lee, bring it back to me. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. It's always good to have you with us. Thank those that called in and shared your thoughts and ideas with us. It's always good to hear from you. There you go, Lee. Folks, have a great week. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to one another, and we'll see you next week with more Wayback Wednesday. Good night.